Every spring, many gardeners across Europe spend quite a bit of money on products to control plants in their urban gardens, allotments, and lawns. Not the invasive species that could harm our local ecosystems or anything truly toxic, but plants that have fed people for thousands of years. These resilient plants survived empires, famines, and periods of suppression throughout history. They thrive in compacted soil, return after drought, and ask for nothing in return from us. The garden care industry calls them weeds and designs products to make you see them as the enemy. But those behind the industry knew something you were never supposed to realize. These plants can feed you for free, and they cannot be owned in the same way as commercial seeds. Welcome to nature's lost vault for sustainable urban gardening here in Europe. One of these plants has a history of being banned by an empire long ago. It was not just discouraged or replaced by something better, but properly outlawed, with fields burned and seeds destroyed. Possession carried serious penalties in some accounts from the time. In the early 1600s, when European explorers reached new territories, they encountered civilizations relying on corn beans and this valued grain. The explorers recognized its importance and ordered it banned across the conquered lands as a measure of control. Today we know it as amaranth, and you will see it popping up in the cracks of garden beds, along edges, and in disturbed soil across our cities. That plant is a direct descendant of the grain targeted back then, and what survived still outperforms many crops we grow now. A 100-gram serving delivers 14 grams of complete protein, with all 9 essential amino acids, plus good levels of iron, magnesium, and lysine. It is the amino acid often low in wheat, corn, and rice, so it fills a useful gap in our diets. Researchers have studied it as a potential food source for challenging conditions, and a close relative growing wild shows remarkable resilience. The grain from all those years ago is still here, waiting for us to notice it again in our small urban plots and allotments. You know the next plant was not banned by any empire, but sort of erased through advertising campaigns after the war. Early European settlers valued it highly and made room for it in their limited supplies as a vital food and medicine crop. By the 1700s, it was well established, and for the next 250 years it remained a kitchen staple. The leaves made fresh spring salads, the roots could be roasted for a coffee-like drink, and it served as a tonic for various everyday conditions. Ancient civilizations across Europe documented its uses, and 1 cup of the greens provides more than 500% of your daily vitamin K. It also offers more beta-carotene than a carrot, and more calcium per calorie than milk, so it is genuinely nutritious. Then, companies began marketing synthetic herbicides to homeowners, promoting the idea of a perfect, uniform lawn that was green-controlled and clean. This plant became the symbol of a neglected property, and products were built around eradicating it completely. Today you see the dandelion listed right on the packaging of many weed killers, along with clover. Those are 2 plants our own cultural predecessors deliberately carried across distances to help them survive new conditions. The dandelion itself did not change, and its nutrition did not change either. The story around it shifted because companies needed recurring revenue from a problem they created in the first place. A bunch of these greens at a premium shop can cost quite a bit, yet the exact same plant grows free in every unmown lawn or allotment edge. The early gardeners knew its value, and it is worth remembering that when you spot it in your own sustainable city garden. A third plant is likely sitting in your grass right now, and clinical trials have looked at what it can offer in a realistic way. In 2005, a peer-reviewed trial with 60 postmenopausal women showed that an extract from this plant reduced symptom scores by 78%. A more recent trial found the same extract taken over 3 to 6 months helped improve lipid profiles, with total cholesterol, LDL, and triglycerides moving down, while HDL went up. This plant is red clover, and the compounds responsible are isoflavones that interact gently with estrogen receptors in the body. They help modulate the hormonal fluctuations behind hot flashes, disrupted sleep, mood changes, and related shifts during menopause. The hormone replacement market is large, with synthetic products requiring prescriptions, but red clover grows freely in temperate lawns and allotments across Europe. Before synthetic fertilizers took over, European farmers planted it deliberately to restore depleted fields, because it fixes nitrogen from the air. It also fed livestock, and women in those communities knew from lived experience that it supported the midlife transition. That knowledge was not disproved by science, but got separated over time with changes in how we approach healthcare. A bottle of red clover extract at the shops costs quite a bit, yet the flowers producing the same compounds are right at the base of your lawn. They reach peak concentration during bloom, and you can harvest them safely for teas or infusions in your urban space. Then there is the plant that an industry encouraged us to forget, because it was used for clothing long before cotton became dominant. Strip away the water content, and the leaf contains about 30% protein by dry weight, according to research. It is comparable to common beans as a source of essential amino acids, and a single cup blanched gives nearly 100% of your daily vitamin A. It also supplies significant calcium, iron, potassium, and B vitamins, so it is a solid contributor to a balanced plate. For 2,000 years, stinging nettle was a staple vegetable across northern Europe, with Roman soldiers using it in cold climates. Medieval communities enjoyed it in spring soups, and in Scotland, nettle pudding remains one of the oldest recorded recipes on the island. The textile side of its story is equally practical, because nettle fiber predates cotton in European history and produces strong linen-like threads. When supply chains failed during the First World War, factories turned back to nettle for military uniforms, using millions of kilograms in 1 year alone. The plant kept people clothed when global trade was disrupted. Yet after the war, cotton reasserted itself and investment stopped. The nettle was reclassified as a nuisance, and its sting, which 60 seconds of blanching completely neutralizes, was promoted as a reason to avoid it. What required just a quick step became the excuse for abandoning a 2,000-year food tradition in many places. The leaves in your garden right now are still 30% protein, and that simple preparation step has not changed at all. In your small urban garden or allotment here in Europe, you can let a patch of nettle grow in a corner away from paths. Harvest the young tops in spring wearing gloves, then blanch them for soups or pesto, and you will have a free, nutritious green that supports biodiversity too. It attracts certain butterflies and improves soil structure without any extra effort from you. Many of us in cities like Manchester or Berlin already have these plants appearing naturally, so why not make use of them instead of fighting them? Some plants were not banned by a single named villain, but were erased by a system that needed you dependent on commercial options in your urban gardening. They got pushed aside gradually as farming became more controlled and reliant on annual purchases for allotments and city plots across Europe. Back in the 1840s, a mummified man was discovered in a Danish bog where he had died in the 4th century BC. When scientists looked at his last meal, they found seeds of this plant, which had been part of European diets for ages. Before spinach arrived in Europe from Asia, this plant was the main leafy green used across the continent in everyday meals. Roman records document its use, and Neolithic sites hold its seeds, showing how long it has been valued here. A North American cousin was grown for thousands of years with other crops by indigenous communities. We call it lamb's quarters, and it is a real asset in sustainable urban gardening right here in Europe today. A 100-gram serving delivers 96% of your daily vitamin C, along with 73% of vitamin A. It also gives 31% of your daily calcium and more protein per gram than spinach, which makes it a solid choice for your plate. The seeds act like a wild version of quinoa, and you can dry them, grind them into flour, or cook them as a simple grain. A single plant can produce up to 75,000 seeds, so once it settles in your allotment, it tends to stay reliably year after year. European contact brought wheat and new farming models that favored crops you could buy seed for each season and control on paper. Lamb's quarters spreads freely in disturbed soil and could not be taxed or sold easily, so it was labeled a weed instead. By the 20th century, many extension programs across Britain and the continent listed it as a target for broadleaf treatments. Yet it continues to appear naturally in city gardens and small plots without any help from us at all. You can pick the young leaves for fresh salads or steam them gently like spinach when you want something nutritious and local. It adds a touch of biodiversity to your space and needs no extra watering or feeding, which fits perfectly with low-effort urban growing. Let a few plants grow along the edges of your raised beds, and you will have free greens appearing when you need them most. This plant has been here longer than many of our modern vegetables, and it still delivers in a quiet, reliable way. There is another plant that followed European settlers across the ocean and appeared wherever the ground was disturbed by boots or carts. Native peoples noticed it and called it white man's footprint, as a straightforward description rather than anything negative. It grew in compacted soil, where few other plants could survive the tough conditions left behind. Broadleaf plantain had been a respected medicinal herb in Europe for 2 millennia before that journey. Ancient physicians documented its uses for healing wounds and easing inflammation in practical everyday remedies. Vikings carried it, and later doctors praised its power to mend damaged tissue with real consistency. Modern studies confirm compounds like allantoin that support cell regeneration and reduce swelling naturally. It also shows antimicrobial properties that back up its traditional role in simple first aid. You can pick a fresh leaf, crush it between your fingers, and press it straight onto a sting or minor cut in the garden. The natural mucilage draws out irritation, while the anti-inflammatory elements calm the area quickly without any fuss. It grows in pavement cracks, along paths, and in the compacted corners of urban properties where nothing else wants to root. This plant is still exactly what healers described hundreds of years ago, and it costs you nothing at all. There is a plant that fills the critical gap between stored winter food and the first proper spring growth in your allotment. Before easy sources of vitamin C were common, people often felt the strain during long, cold months here in Europe. Wood sorrel grows happily in partial shade and north-facing spots where cultivated crops struggle to get started. It produces fresh, tender leaves even when the season feels quite cold and the soil is still waking up. The sharp citrus flavor comes from oxalic acid and tells you right away that it carries vitamin C in each small leaf. European folk traditions used it as a gentle tonic and digestive aid for generations of gardeners and foragers. You will spot it under trees and in the shaded edges of your garden or balcony containers most years. Add the leaves sparingly to salads for a refreshing sour note when your usual vegetables are still weeks away from harvest. Sometimes plants get sidelined, not by outright force, but by laws written to protect certain trades and commodities. For 1,000 years before hops took over, this plant was essential in traditional ale brewing across medieval England and beyond. Brewers knew it as alehoof and added it to clarify the liquid, extend shelf life, and give a mild bitterness. It later gained the common name ground ivy, which many gardeners still recognize in hedges and borders today. Historical herbalists prescribed it for coughs and respiratory comfort with a matter-of-fact approach. It contains rosmarinic acid, which has documented anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects in modern Czechs. A 16th century purity law restricted beer ingredients to favor hops that could be taxed and traded easily. Ground ivy faded from brewing and gradually from everyday household knowledge as a result of that shift. The plant still grows in garden edges and hedgerows with all its original properties intact and ready to use. You can experiment safely with small amounts in herbal teas if you forage carefully in your own urban space. It supports local insects and adds a layer of natural balance to city gardens without demanding any special treatment. Remembering its history helps us value these resilient plants in a realistic way for sustainable living now. One plant stands out for its remarkable biology, according to recent research shared in scientific papers. It runs two different photosynthesis systems in the same cells, allowing both fast growth and strong drought survival. This combination is unique among land plants and makes it incredibly tough in varied conditions. It also packs up to 400 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids per 100 grams of fresh leaf. The herbicide industry targets it specifically and calls it one of the most common weeds in gardens. Yet we know it as Purslane, and it pops up freely in driveways, cracked paving, and sunny beds across Europe. In your urban plot, Purslane provides succulent leaves with a mild flavor that works well in summer dishes. Use them raw in salads during warmer months for a natural boost of omega-3s without buying supplements. The final plant times its appearance perfectly for the trickiest window in the gardening year here in Europe. February and March arrive with empty raised beds and cold ground that feels far from ready for planting. Chickweed forms dense, tender mats of bright green long before most other crops even think about starting. It begins producing fresh growth in the exact moment your body often craves nutrients after winter stores run low. Indigenous communities in various regions used it as an early spring green to restore energy and vitamins. It supplies vitamins A, C, and the B complex, plus minerals like calcium, iron, magnesium, and zinc in useful amounts. Once established, chickweed returns reliably every late winter in your garden, without any sowing or fuss. Harvest the young tops gently for salads or smoothies, and you will notice how well it fits the seasonal gap. Looking at this whole list together, none of these plants are rare or difficult to identify in our cities and towns. They appear in the margins of your property along fence lines and at the edges of garden beds without invitation. Together, they can supply early vitamin C, complete protein, omega-3 fatty acids, and supportive compounds for daily health. None of them require seed packets, prepared soil, extra irrigation, fertilizer, or yearly replanting from you. The garden care industry built its story around uniform green monocultures as the sign of a successful plot. Anything that grows without permission gets called a problem that needs annual spending to control. This message drives recurring purchases of products in households from London to Berlin and beyond. The older knowledge passed down by our ancestors tells a quieter, more practical and resilient story instead. These plants that were once suppressed or forgotten have kept returning on their own every single year. They served as everyday food medicine and reliable allies in traditional systems long before modern replacements. That foundation is still growing quietly at the edges of your lawn allotment or balcony right now. If this has opened your eyes to new possibilities in sustainable urban gardening, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so you catch the next video when it arrives, with more ideas for your space. Every like and share helps keep this traditional knowledge alive and useful for gardeners like us. Your small city garden or allotment can become far more productive and self-sufficient with these free plants. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one soon.